Hello everyone and welcome to Japan Newsflash, where we will take a look at the latest news from Japan and use them in order to improve your Japanese. Let's go! Alright, let's jump into our first news of the day. It says, 政府、韓国の努力認める、徴用工問題協議. So in this headline, we first have the word 政府, which means government. After that, it's followed by 韓国, which means South Korea. After that, we have doryoku, which means effort, and we have mitomeru, which in this case means to acknowledge. After that, we have choyoko, which means forced labor, and we have mondai kyogi. So mondai means problem, and kyogi means to discuss the problem. So if we put all those words together, we can translate this headline into Government acknowledges Korean efforts, consults regarding forced labor problem. So in this case, the government, of course, means the Japanese government. So this very old problem is still revolving around Japan, all the time when Japan was colonizing Korea and had all kind of forced labor and other kind of crimes, so to say, going on there. And so Japan was already apologizing for it and actually paid with money and so on. So for the Japanese government, this topic is done already. But for the Korean government, they always keep going on with the problem in some ways. And this time they're saying that if Japan is not paying or apologizing for what they did, for example, for the for the people who were forced to work there, or for the women who had to serve the Japanese men there or were forced to serve, then they will take the money from the Japanese companies in Korea. And this is when the Japanese government now said that this, if they will do, or if they go on with that, then they will do the same thing in Japan and take the money from the Korean companies there. So what the situation right now is that the Japanese government and the Korean government, they are discussing how to solve this problem. And apparently the Korean government now said that they, for now, will not take any money from the Japanese companies, but it's not solved yet. So the Japanese government then said that they acknowledge the efforts that the Korean government is doing for solving this problem, but it is still not in sight how to solve this problem actually, because the stances are still the same. The Korean government still wants some kind of money or some kind of apology, but for the Japanese government, the problem is already solved, or the issue is already done. So it is in a kind of a stalemate right now, and we will have to see how this situation actually is going to evolve in the future. Alright, let's jump into our second news, which says 自衛隊でハラスメント100人以上が回答元隊員再発防止を which then translates into, first we have JETA, which is the Japanese Defense Forces. Harassment is, well, just as it says, harassment. Then we have 100人以上, which means over 100 people. Ga kaito, so which means that over 100 people have replied. Moto tain means a former people or a former soldier, so to say. And then we have saihatsuboshi, which means prevention for, or prevention that it won't happen again, so to say. The title says there has been a survey from the Japanese self-defense forces regarding harassment over there. And as you can imagine, there, as the title says, there have been many cases reported over there. So just to look at the numbers itself, there have been asked 82 women, 58 men, and 6 people who didn't answer the gender in this survey. And what they said is that within those overall 115 people, there have been 29 exact examples of what they have experienced within the Japanese defense forces. And just to name some examples that they have listed there, so one woman in her 20s was reporting that she was at the toilet, and the toilet was universal, so it was for both men and women. And she reported that when she was there, another older man came into her and touched her at her legs. Yeah, I don't think that somebody would ever want to experience something like that at the toilet, or even unisex toilets at all. And the second part is, for example, a woman in her 30s said that she was invited to a baseball match or to play baseball, and that time she was already pulled off her uniform, and when she said that she didn't want to, she was actually slapped into her face. And yeah, just this is an example where it just was not only uncomfortable, but it was also violence involved, so to say. A third one was another woman in her 30s, which said that she reported to her superior that she was pregnant, and when she reported it, he was smoking and like blowing the smoke into her face, and then he actually told her that she would have to get her husband over there, and then they would have both get on their knees and actually apologize to him for that. And so what actually is generally reported from the Japanese self-defense forces is that the men are in a way superior position there, and obviously the numbers are also way in favor of the men than for the women. So the women there, also those, including those women who answered the survey, they're saying that there's not really much they can do, and many of them are actually trying or playing with the thought of just quitting the self-defense forces, which is really bad image for the Japanese self-defense forces and also for Japan in a whole, I think, because I think that the army itself always kind of reflects the society as a whole as well, right? So it is really shocking to see those kind of cases happening there and happening frequently, obviously. So the problem, or the biggest problem now, is that there is no real answer from the Japanese self-defense about how they are going to take in this survey, because usually you would expect some kind of answer and some kind of explanation about how they are going to solve this problem in the future, right? But apparently this survey is not answered, it has not sparked the interest of any officials over there, so it seems. So the question for the future is, how are they going to solve these problems, or are they even willing to solve this problem? At the time of this report, there have been no signs at all. So the Japanese self-defense forces really have to do something there in order to not only repair the image, but also to make the whole environment, or working environment for their women there, better overall. Alright guys, this was the news for this week. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any kind of comments or feedback or anything you would like to include into the videos or anything else, just feel free to leave it into the comments, and I will go back at it right away. Thank you very much. Bye bye.